Now, the parent of a student who attends a primary school in central west New South Wales has raised concerns his child is being taught to hate Australia. Year 1 students, that's 6-year-olds, were encouraged to colour in a poster for NAIDOC Week, which read, "No pride in genocide, stop stealing our kids, and Black Lives Matter." Let's bring in Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, the CLP Senator for the Northern Territory, joining us live from the hometown of Alice Springs. Thanks for joining us, Jacinta. This is just shocking, isn't it? 6-year-old kids and being preached that the genocide is practiced in this country?
I'm sure a kid at that age doesn't even know what the word genocide means. I mean, you know, when you're that young, you're very easily manipulated. You're still getting your head around what words actually mean, and you're just more concerned with being a kid, and learning at school. And I think it's just really, it's a huge letdown that schools, primary schools, there are high schools, there are universities that are actually pushing indoctrination of this kind of racial division. And I think it's so right for this parent to speak up about this issue, because it's deeply concerning. It's not how I was brought up. It's not how many Australian children were brought up, and it shouldn't be the case now.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that poster, the whole thing is just so political. It's a sort of poster you'd expect some uni students to sort of radicals to colour in. I mean, as you know, I've got little fellas at school. Yeah, it's great if they're doing stuff for NAIDOC Week, but wouldn't it be about culture? Wouldn't it be about didgeridoos and aspects of Indigenous culture, happy things for everybody to share?
Well, that's exactly right, Chris. The best way to actually bring people together is to create understanding. You know, if the school's really concerned about ensuring that kids know about our history, about Indigenous Australians, then they should be focusing on ensuring that aspects of traditional culture are taught. You know, if there's nobody around to be able to do that, to contribute that, to share that within the school, within the classrooms, then look for the material that does do that. But it's really disappointing that instead indoctrination takes place in so many schools. There are so many young people that aren't Indigenous that feel, you know, it's like they're pushing on that sense of guilt on children, which doesn't create understanding. It makes them feel bad about who they are on the basis of the colour of their own skin, and it lends itself to actually then creating resentments, and it actually applies racism in the name of trying to stamp out racism, if you like. It's unproductive, and our kids shouldn't be subject to it.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Got to stamp it out. Now, you've been travelling around this week. One of the things you've been trying to do is put pressure on the government not to cancel the cashless welfare card, the cashless debit card. The great man Noel Pearson has spoken out against this. I believe you were speaking to him as well. I mean, he says this is going to undermine decades of good work in some remote Indigenous communities.
That's exactly right. I just don't get, there's a lot of very confused people coming to these hearings that don't even understand the fact that the cashless debit card itself is an improved piece of technology to the basics card. The basics card is something that was applied in the Northern Territory only and cannot be used anywhere else in the country. And the system that Noel has, which is working very effectively for the communities up there, is based on the cashless debit card. So he has begged the government to not withdraw the cashless debit card, because this would, you know, ultimately rip the rug out from underneath these vulnerable people whose lives are so much better because they have this form of income management. And while there's this argument that the organisations that want the funding redirected so that they can be better funded to provide their services, while they all hate on income management and say it doesn't work, they then on the other hand call for it to be voluntary. So if it doesn't work at all, why then are they asking for it to be made voluntary? Clearly, it is working. and it is supporting very marginalised people. I know that there's been Aboriginal women in the town camps here in Alice Springs who have spoken to Minister Rishworth and said to her, no, we want this for our lives. This is supporting us. And that's what the overwhelming message is, that it is working for people, and that's why these organisations are calling for it to be voluntary.
Now, Jacinta, if you're talking to Noel Pearson, presumably you might have had a chat to him about the Indigenous voice to Parliament as well. Isn't this exactly the sort of issue where an Indigenous voice to Parliament might be able to make a really strong case to government not to do this?
To be quite honest, and I have had this conversation with Noel previously about my position on all of this, and we respect each other's position on this particular issue. And again, Noel's been a great advocate for Indigenous Australians, and he's done some wonderful work, and that's because of his hard work and his advocacy over the years. And I just don't see how this idea of a voice is actually going to lend itself to that. The more I think about this idea of a voice, the more I feel like it's the government's opportunity to handball the difficult Indigenous issues, to say, put in the responsibility of the voice. If they come back to us with something we like, we might tick it off. Otherwise, we don't have to take that advice anyway, which is what they're ultimately doing now. So this process, it does speak to the process of those of us who are elected to Parliament doing a better job to engage with our constituents and making sure that when they call out for things that are saving their lives, that we ensure that they have those tools for them. I mean, the Minister Rishworth didn't need a voice because she's been on the ground in town camps. The women have been telling her what it is that they need. She's been told. So there's nothing that she doesn't have the opportunity to then walk away from this. She should act on it. She needs to act on it.
Jacinta, thanks for joining us. Been a busy time. Hope you get some downtime over the weekend. Maybe watch those pies on Sunday afternoon. See you later.
Maybe, hopefully. Thanks.